if you eat chicken, you've had medium rare chicken by fact. If you go to like AVP or McDonald's or any of these places where you get like a chicken salad and the chicken's kind of moist and like not dry, like they're cooking it at a lower temperature because texturally and from a moisture point of view, it tastes better. But you have to hold it for sufficient time. So like the guidelines they give consumers are, they err on the side of food safety, which is absolutely the right thing for them to do. Because when it comes to, would you rather have it taste good or would you rather have it be safe? It's kind of like well, who wouldn't want it to be safe? There's a really interesting little footnote to that, which has to do with ground meat. With things like chicken, they're generally, the temperatures are for the entire chicken, because salmonella can actually permeate through the meat. It's unusual. They're supposed to pull the chickens that are actually that sick aside, but it's potentially possible. With things like steak, though, where it's whole muscle intact, where it hasn't been cooked, hasn't been cut or jacquarded, it's only the surface that they really care about. As long as you pan-sear a piece of steak, the inside can be, uncooked, completely raw. And from a food safety point of view, it's technically fine, which is why you can order things like your steak, rare, but you can't order your chicken rare. But when it comes to, say, hamburger, where it's something ground up, the whole thing is outside. There is no inside. So ordering a hamburger, like, I kind of secretly want to go to like a food scientist convention and ask them this question, like, how do you like your hamburgers cooked? Because like technically none of them should answer anything other than well done. Because unless you actually hold it in a sous vide bath at 140 degrees for a sufficient time for bacterial kill-off, which you could actually probably make a really good burger that way if you're willing to go through the pain and the amount of work and make it safe. But yeah, just to answer your question, it's probably a really long answer, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna go for one more question, I'll go on. Black shirt in the back. Sushi, you mean from a bacterial point of view? Okay, so yeah, well, I mean, from a bacterial point of view, we can certainly talk about sushi. Things like tuna are actually excluded by the FDA from needing to be cooked. That has to do with, for tuna, there's no really bacterial pathogens that actually, like salmonella, just doesn't exist in the deep waters of the ocean. Like, it's not like tuna get infected with that. And from a parasitic point of view, the same thing's true as well. Things like salmon actually can come down with parasites that can be an issue. It's pretty rare. But in that case, you can kill parasites by freezing them. So if you're really concerned about food safety and stuff like fish, you freeze it. There are certain time temperature hold guidelines that the government publishes. For fish, it's, I think, -20 F for 7 days or like insanely cold for 1 day. But yeah, tuna is actually excluded, so tuna's fine. When I go to a restaurant, I generally like to order my tuna sashimi, not my salmon sashimi after doing this book. Does that answer your question? Okay, I'm gonna go on for a little more. Oh man, I have to go really fast because I have like 13 minutes left. Should I go really fast and like blast through this, or should I just like cut the last bit of it out? Blast? Okay, unusual temperatures. That's my oven, 845 degrees. If you clip the lock off of it, you can put it on clean cycle, open the door, and put your pizza in at a really, really hot temperature. It's wicked awesome. And the reason for this is that stuff like pizza, if you actually go down to your local pizza joint that makes really good flat crust pizza, they're doing it on a fire that's like 800 to like 1,000 degrees. I actually went down to the pizza joint in Cambridge where I live and like took that little IR thermometer. That's what it looks like. Best cake toy ever, as I said. And metered it, and theirs was like 1,000 degrees. You can cook a pizza in about 45 seconds. And it comes out fucking delicious. But you might break your oven. So on the left is the surviving pane from my oven. On the right is a piece of Pyroceram 3. It's what the US military used in the 1950s on nose cones of missiles. It's heat rated and stable to like, I think, 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically, I cracked my oven through thermal shock. Like a little drop of pizza sauce like fell, hit the glass, and it went Yum. So yeah, people like to talk about dry ice, liquid nitrogen actually, and ice cream. What I don't get is why no one's thought to take a bottle of like Goldschlager into the mixture, because ethanol doesn't freeze until a really cold temperature. Liquid nitrogen's colder. So you can make like ice cream as like an entire shot in a scoop, and like get hangovers from ice cream, and it's really, really good. I was gonna do a demo for you guys today, but I didn't have a liquor license for New York. So there's this thing called an anti-griddle. It's basically a plate that's really cold. You can think of it like a griddle, but instead of making things hot, it makes things cold. They're really expensive. I couldn't get my hands on one, so I made my own. Dry ice with ethanol with a 6-inch square plate of steel from McMaster-Carr. Basically gives you a cold service, and my handy dandy IR thermometer tells me like cold. You can do things like spray like mousses and stuff on it, and like get this thing that's like a pancake where the middle's like warm and like good, and the outside's like hard and set, and like pick it up like a little sandwich and like eat it. If you look at a lot of modernist cuisine stuff, like Alinea or El Bulli over in Spain, like they use this stuff to do unusual things from a temperature point of view. But it's really cool. You can play with it. Speaking of El Bulli and Alinea and Fat Duck and places like that, who here has heard the term molecular gastronomy? Who here likes the term molecular gastronomy? So, in the culinary world, it's pretty much despised as a term, which is kind of, it's been an interesting thing to learn more about. Hervé Tisse, who's kind of responsible for coining the term, himself says that molecular gastronomy is what you do in the lab. It's the study of physical and chemical changes in food, and that what you might do in the kitchen would be maybe molecular cooking. You know, I've heard somebody else say modernist cuisine, but you know, playing around with stuff in the kitchen, you know, it's kind of like fashion on the Paris runway. 98% of it kind of is bad, and 2% of it's really awesome. So it gets this kind of bad rap sometimes of doing unusual things in the kitchen, because a lot of times you see the knockoffs where it doesn't really work. But when you see something where it really is magical, it's amazing. So a lot of modernist cuisine stuff, for lack of a better term, relies on food additives. These three things all have food additives in them. Here's a nice little handy dandy table. I'm going to skip, it's in the book. This is a little video of me taking one of these gelling agents and actually like just playing with it. So that's water, 98% water and 2% Carrageenan. You can do stuff instead of water. You can do stuff like this. Is what? We know where your mind is. So this is 98% rum. Unfortunately, it tastes like 98% rum, too. But if you cut it with orange juice, like 40%, 50% orange juice and 40 or 50% alcohol, you can make really nice Jell-O shots that are like unlike anything you've ever had. You can also nail them to a wall. When working with this stuff, you basically boil it. This particular stuff right here is agar, and I've got these nice little vials of agar for you guys to take home. Did everyone get a handout? Who did not get a handout yet? You guys did not get a handout? Okay, who has the pile of handouts? Keep your hands up, let them see. On your way out, you can pick one of these up. I'll be up here with a table of them. This is 2 grams. There's a recipe on that handout to make chocolate panna cotta using agar. Chocolate panna cotta. Basically, you throw it in liquid, you boil it, and it gets thick. That's just a 1% solution. There's different types. Some gelling agents produce this really firm, like thick thing, which is just balanced in the spoon. And other types kind of give you this flexible gel. But they retain their memory of their shape. You know, the true gels. That's what the chocolate panna cotta, just a really quick photo, looks like. There's other fun things in the modernist cuisine world. This one's a piece of steak cooked and a piece of chicken cooked that have been bounded together with transglutaminase. It's basically meat glue. It takes 2 different proteins and literally like cross-links them, and actually from a molecular level does covalent bonding on them. So yeah, it's actually a little scary to work with because, you know, we're made of protein. Oh yeah, okay, I kind of said this as we went. Things that surprised me. Hey, what do you know? So we probably just have time for a few questions. Go for it. Favorite source for buying things? The internet. It depends. Come see me afterward. I've got a list of, there's actually one of the pages in the book's got a list of places. Next question? Black shirt. Where do I get my liquid nitrogen from? Iggo's Welding Supply. Red shirt.
When you take cream and you turn it to make butter,
Mm-hmm.
by shaking it a little bit, what's the chemical reaction that's actually taking place?
why does cream turn into butter? I can give you an educated guess, I'm not sure. Fat globules in the milk, you're actually shearing parts of them off, and then they can stick to each other. And so you get a metastructure that can actually, the globules kind of form this big long chain, a kind of three-dimensional mesh. When does the book come out? I love you. So I have galley copies you can peek at. I can't give them to you. My publisher, who is O'Reilly, would kill me. It's due out August 3rd. You can pre-order on Amazon. You can go to cookingforgeeks.com and hit the big buy a copy button, and I'll love you even more. Here, take a look. Green shirt. Good source for food science about vegetables. I have not found good sources for vegetables. As I was saying earlier, it's one of these things that the food science world has not studied as much. I mean, you can get into the journals. I mean, go look at Food Science Journal. I mean, for vegetarians. Broaden. Yeah, I realize, based on the gentleman's comment earlier, that I have talked a lot about meat, which really sucks for you vegetarians, but I swear there's a lot more of interesting stuff in the book. Like, it's not, like, meat heavy. Good source. I will have to think about that. Send me an email and I will dig up more. Red shirt?
There's actually a book, which I have read most of, called On Food and Cooking.
Yes, Harold McGee's book on food and cooking.
Yeah, and it actually has a lengthy discussion about like cooking stuff and how acidity affects cooking broccoli.
Yeah. pH is really important, actually. So a lot of the temperature things that I mentioned earlier differ by pH. Like pH will affect it. Things like Maillard reactions, pH will definitely affect the temperature that they happen at. You can actually get down to room temperature. Self-tanning, instant tanning stuff is a Maillard reaction. Black shirt?
You mentioned briefly about genetics when it comes to food tasting ability. What about food preference? We notice my son, for example, doesn't like much sugar, does like
Okay.
bitter things, and
Oh, no problem. I'm sorry, but I'm being told that we have to wrap up because we're out of time. Come see me afterward. I will be out around the corner. Please come pick up one of these if you want. Thanks.